Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Join us as we seek the truth and travel the long road to justice. Hi, everybody. GiGi flying solo here. Wanted to give you an update on the murder charges against Alex Murdaugh. They were handed down today. 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. This is in relation to his son and wife's murder that happened June 7th of last year. So, Colleton grand jury handed down the indictment, and looking at the indictment, it seems that Alex maybe is the lone suspect. There was really no other information about the crimes in that indictment, and there was no motive given. So, shortly after the murders, the Colleton County Sheriff's Office recused themselves from the case due to a conflict of interest and handed that investigation over to SLED, which is the state law enforcement division. As we know, the Murdaugh family has had their hand in the Low Country for almost 100 years. So a lot of conflict of interest in this case in general. So Maggie was 55 and Paul was 22. They were found shot to death on their Moselle property near the dog kennels. And people who knew Maggie said she loved animals and actually spent a lot of time down at those kennels. Her name was on the property when she was murdered, that Moselle property. And we've also heard that Maggie saw a divorce attorney about 6 weeks before she was murdered. And at the time of her murder was living at the Edisto Beach house away from him. Now, his attorney said they had no problems, that kind of thing, but clearly he was wrong. So those murders were believed to have happened between 9 and 9:30 p.m. And Alec called Hampton County 911 at 10:07 p.m. and that call was routed to Colleton County. In that 911 call, which has been released a while back, Alex said, "I need the police and an ambulance immediately. My wife and child were just shot badly." And at one point during the call, he says, "It's bad. Nobody's breathing." He said he had just gotten home, and Alec told dispatch he had touched the bodies and said he needed to get off the phone to call some of his family. It took about 18 minutes for first responders to arrive. Paul had been shot in the chest and the head at close range with a shotgun, and Maggie was found face down, shot multiple times with a rifle, including twice at close range while she was on the ground. And on an episode of Dateline, it was said she was found facing away from Paul as if she was running away. Alex's father died 2 days after the murders, and they say that was natural causes. They found shell casings at the scene from an AR-style rifle, and Fitz News says they were told the clothing that Alec was wearing the night of the murders tested positive for high-velocity spatter, and high-velocity spatter patterns are typically attributed to gunshots. It's almost like a mist that comes out, and technicians can use microscopes to look at clothing that you were wearing at the time of a murder and can find these little teeny tiny droplets of blood inside the fabric. And all that means really is that he was in close contact with at least one of the victims at the time of the murder. He did say on the 911 call that he had touched the bodies, and that might have been an excuse for having some blood on his clothes, but clearly he does not watch forensic files because there have been so many episodes where they examine clothes under a microscope, find this high velocity spatter, and boom, you got your suspect. So Alex's attorney Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin gave a statement to Fox Carolina saying Alec wants his family and friends and everyone to know that he did not have anything to do with the murders of Maggie and Paul. He loved them more than anything in the world. It was very clear from day one that law enforcement and the attorney general prematurely concluded that Alec was responsible for the murder of his wife and son. But we know that Alec did not have any motive whatsoever to murder them. We are immediately filing a motion for a speedy trial. We are requesting that the Attorney General turn over all evidence within 30 days as required by law, and we demand to have a trial within 60 days of receiving that evidence. A spokesperson for the Attorney General, Alan Wilson, said the case will be tried as soon as it can reasonably be scheduled. The Attorney General also said all the efforts of our office and the law enforcement agencies involved in this investigation have been focused on seeking justice for the victims' families. We want to thank the state law enforcement division, the attorneys and staff in our office, and everyone who worked on this case for their tireless efforts to gather evidence and follow where it led. We also want to thank the Colleton County Grand Jury for listening to that evidence and for their service to the people of the state. So, SLED Chief Mark Keel said over the last 13 months, agents and our partners have worked day in and day out to build a case against the person responsible for the murders of Maggie and Paul and to exclude those who were not. At no point did agents lose focus on this investigation. From the beginning, I've been clear the priority was to ensure justice was served. Today is one more step in a long process for justice for Maggie and Paul. Now, we talked about this yesterday. Before today's murder charges, Alec faced more than 80 criminal charges, which were brought by 16 state grand jury indictments. These are for schemes to defraud his clients and his law firm, including the family of his dead housekeeper, Gloria Satterfield, a deaf man who is a quadriplegic, and a law enforcement officer injured in the line of duty. And all of those schemes totaled nearly $8.5 million. Now, we still have the death of Gloria Satterfield, who allegedly fell at his home and later died in a hospital 20-some days later. They have said recently that her body will be exhumed if it hasn't already. And then we have Stephen Smith's death. You know, he was found on a road back in July 8th of 2015 with a 7-inch hole in his head. And interestingly enough, the Murdaugh family was named at least 40 times in the investigation into his death. A SLED spokesperson said at one of Alex's first court hearings that they are re-examining Stephen's death due to something learned during Maggie and Paul's murder investigation. So that tells you this, I really do think he's going to get some more murder charges before this is said and done. So when talking about Stephen Smith on 48 Hours, it was said when you're hit by a car, you typically come out of your shoes, but Stephen's shoes were still on his feet and they were loosely tied. So it would have obviously come off of his feet had he been hit by a car. Also, they noticed there was no road rash on him and no indication on his clothing that he had been hit by a car. In fact, former trooper Todd Proctor said that the body looked more staged, like it was placed in the roadway. And his mom thought from the very beginning that this was a hate crime. Stephen was gay. And there were rumors swirling around the Low Country for a while about members of the Murdaugh family and Stephen Smith. So we're just hoping that this leads to justice for several people who are now dead. So Alec has a bond hearing on these murder charges July 20th at 10 a.m. at the Colleton County Courthouse. We will keep an eye on that. That's the latest. The indictments really didn't say anything evidence related, what led them to this, but maybe soon we'll get some more information. In the meantime, we will see you tomorrow. We will be back on the Vallow Daybell Mega Series timeline. So we'll see you then.